Hi, this is Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur, international speaker, and longtime coach in professional baseball, coaching in 3 World Series. And welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am super excited about my guest today, Brad Chiet. Am I saying that right? Chiet.
Chiet, like try it.
Chiet, like try it, but Chiet. Chiet, like Brad Chiet on the Winners Find a Way show. Super excited. You're going to love this. LA super phenom, musical guru. Brad, bring us up. Take us into the show.
All right, man. Trent, come on, man. Bring it on.
I love it. I love it. That is Brad Chiet.
That was your
love
theme,
it.
man.
Brad is the owner of Fuel Music and Sound, longtime entrepreneur, but it is a crazy background. And I want to get into that in just a minute. Before we go, Winners Find a Way show. If this is your first time joining us, have you ever faced stiff adversity, felt like the losses are mounting, and you need to find a better way? I think you've come to the right place. Whether you're already an entrepreneur, a athlete, a business leader looking to get better, or you're just starting your journey to being elite, this is the place. This is the show. This is the podcast you need to be on, because we talk about some tough stuff and some great things, and you will get some lessons along the way. So, Brad, before we introduce you, tell them where people can find you. Where are you online?
Probably the best way is just type in my name. It's interesting because I am the only person in the world with that name. So that's
Really?
the last name is tough, but yeah, that's kind of the cool thing. So if you type in my name, you will find me, and you can go to fuelmusic.com.
Love it. Love it. Are you on social, LinkedIn, all that?
Yeah, LinkedIn's a good place. I do LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, not as much. It's just I only have so much time in the day, and I really try to connect directly with people. I try to reach out, call, text, but I do keep a presence, especially on LinkedIn. And I don't know if you know this, but it's important to have a good LinkedIn profile, because if you type in your name or look for yourself, that will be the second or third thing that pops up. So they have, so that will be something that comes up. So if you're, want people to find you, make sure you put a little time into the LinkedIn. That's an important one.
Man, I'm thinking this like your set background should be your LinkedIn big profile, man. The British pillows, man. Like, you got it pretty dialed in right there. Yeah, like the studio's looking pretty sweet, right?
Thank you, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, so you can see this side, but the side you're not seeing is all the electronic stuff, because a lot of music today is done with electronics and synthesizers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then on that side of the room is more the acoustic side. So the room, the evolution of the spaces, it just divided up into half, like acoustic, which is where you really feel it, and then the other half production, where you do all the, electric work and computer work.
Well, I like it because that's the stuff behind you. I know. I start seeing the soundboards and stuff. It just looks like hieroglyphics, right? Like, I don't know what it, I don't know what it does. I don't know what it means. I just look at it and I'm overwhelmed already looking at soundboards all the time.
Well, that's inspiring. That's where you get your inspiration. And this side of the room, which you don't see, is where you got to do the work, and it's where we are today. But I think a lot of music and a lot of passion and inspiration comes from playing real instruments. So I try to incorporate that.
Well, I love that. I want to get into that a little bit, because I think that matters for a lot of people who always see the end product and go, oh, isn't this great? You see the cover of the band and they're on the album, they got their gear and all, but like the work behind the scene that goes into the jingles for the commercials, the sound going into music and production, all those things. No one thinks about the labor of love, right?
Yeah,
they got to go in.
Sometimes it starts on just a little recorder, like a little handheld, or I used to have a little micro or my phone. If I just have an idea, I'll just hum it in.
Yeah.
That's sometimes where it starts. You just play around on the piano, but it's passion, but it's also a lot of skill where you learn, just like what you do. It's like putting in the hours to get good enough at it. So when you have an idea or an inspiration, you can bring it to fruition and make it happen. So it's not just about having an idea one day and, I want to do this. It's like, you got to put in the hours and the work.
Yeah.
And this room
That's so
is
true.
yeah.
So true. So let's jump in. Brad Chiet,
Good.
owner of Fuel Music and Sound, head of TV music over at Grooveworks. And you're a latecomer a little bit to the entertainment industry, because what most people don't know about you, Brad, is that you used to be a pocket protector wearer. You know, you were an aerospace engineer.
That's right. And you can laugh about the pocket protector, but when you're in that world, that's status. What you keep in that pocket protector, like if you have your gauge and your nice pen and your little ruler thing, it's like, you know, that's like status, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is that like the letters after your name, like, you know, in the real world, like in your pocket, right?
It was cool. Well,
That's
you know,
so
I didn't realize you need those, but you're wearing like a shirt and a tie when you're engineering back then. And you had those little plastic things, or else the pencils will leave marks, and it's important. And you know, that's your tool set, man. And yeah, I was an engineer. I worked, you know, when I got out of college, I got an engineering degree, and I worked in aerospace and defense. I worked on the F-18s, the Harrier, you know, like defense contracts, vertical launch missile systems. And I was out on the shop floor, but I used to have a clipboard, and I used to have, like, during work, I'd have a little clipboard and I'd be like writing music notes and stuff, for like lyrics. For
really? So you knew, like, hey, you weren't sure you were in the right seat, even though I'm sure there's kids that at 10 years old would be like, that's exactly the seat I want to be. Like,
but I didn't know that seat existed.
Martin.
Yeah, I was doing engineering, which was cool, but I didn't even know that. I had no idea that, you know, this is in the 80s. Like today, you know, there's so much talk about, oh, do your dream, do your passion, you can do music. But back then, that was not the case. Yeah. So I did music for fun and a hobby. And then I got my engineering degree. I got a job and I had some money. So I went to the music store to buy some equipment, because now I'm making some money so I can have fun.
Yeah.
And there was a magazine there. And on the cover was this guy who did music for commercials and jingles. And I read it and I was like, wait a second, you can do that for a living? Like I was like, oh my God, like that's a career. And then I started, like, you know, I had like my little equipment I bought, you know, and back then you did everything on cassette. It was like really not like today, but, you know, and I used to write songs. And then the local radio station, I mailed the cassette tape to the local radio station, and they started playing it. You know, so they'd be playing The Cure, Depeche Mode, and then one of my songs. And it was like so exciting to hear yourself on the radio, especially back then, man. There was no internet, no spot, none of that. It was just like, it was like radio. It was cool.
Well, let me touch on that, because you've got this engineering and you've got this passion. Boston, right? Like, weren't they MIT grads? They were all like high level tech.
And Boston.
Yeah.
That's what got me back into music. I was engineering in school. I kind of put the music down, and my brother, he's such a badass, for my birthday, he bought me the Rockman, which was the guy from Boston, Tommy Schultz. It was like small, but you plug your guitar into it and you put headphones on, and it sounds like you're in a studio. It has like reverb and delay and distortion, which at the time, you know, unless you went to a studio, you couldn't get. So that kind of got me. So it's his fault, basically. He got me pumped up.
It's all your brother's fault, and Boston. Those two guys.
Those guys screw me. Yeah. But, you know, it was like, it was so exciting. And if the job I had was better, when you work for a government contractor or any big company, you're very limited in what you can do. And I'm very creative. And, you know, one of my breakthroughs, and as you get older, you learn more about yourself. And I learned that, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. Music, you know, is really important to me. And if I don't do that, I will not be happy. So it's like almost like a curse. It's like you have to do it, even if it's not maybe financially in your best interest, and you got to take a shot at it. You just have to do it sometimes, man. You know, so if you don't have that have to passion, it's not the career I'd recommend. But for some people, you know, we have to do it, man. It's just like there's no choice.
Well, I think it's so good. And by the way, financially, this has worked out okay, hasn't it? Like you're done okay here. Yeah,
fortunately, you know, it has worked out. But I got to tell you, like the first year, like I quit my engineering job, and that was a tough decision to even do that, because obviously my parents were not super supportive of it. They like, you know, you have an engineering degree,
college, right?
You're good. Yeah. Like, I think my dad was afraid I was going to move back in with him and his new wife. That was the fear for him. Like, no, just stick with your job. So I was engineering, and I really wasn't digging it. And, you know, it was really tough for me to decide, what should I do? And there's a couple of things that made me think about it. And one was I asked myself the question, I was trying to take the finances out of the equation. So I asked myself, what would I do if I won the lottery? And I thought, if I won the lottery and money wasn't an issue, then I would quit my job and, get recording equipment and, do music. And then I thought, well, why don't I just quit my job and do that? And even if I make no money, I'll be living like I won the lottery. That's what makes me happy and makes me feel whole and brings me joy. And I think a lot of people get caught in the money trap and they're just working for the dollar, and then they end up having to buy things to try to feel happy. And I remember so many engineering students and friends of mine in college, they're in college students, they get the job. First thing they do is they get a new car payments, apartment. And then all of a sudden they have this nut every month and you're stuck. Yeah. And I remember when I graduated, it's one thing I did not do, it's tempting to buy the new car. Like everybody, you got the job, you can afford the monthly payments, but I knew that then it would restrict my freedom. So I kind of, learned how to delay gratification and know myself enough to what's going to make me happy and what's not, which I think is, super important.
Very powerful. Plus knowingly or unknowingly, right? You went to your passion. So you did spend some money on some equipment that ultimately could serve you, because when all of a sudden you do this cut and say, hey, I'm going to go out, you don't just stop, right? You go, hey, I'm going to upskill. I'm going to go on and enroll at UCLA's music school, right? And you're like, you already got an engineering degree and you're like, you already got a job, right? You go to work in the business, a little job, right? And something that you can do, make some money. And you enroll in school, still not having the big overhead, but yet, investing back into Brad and really ultimate fuel music, right? That's what it'll become.
Yeah. So it's having the passion to invest in yourself and really, it's things you want to do because you're going to be, I think, an entrepreneur. And I think all entrepreneurs will agree with this. It's a lot of time and studying and trying to figure stuff out. And that passion is what keeps you in there when things are tough and things are not going well. There was a lot of years where it wasn't, I moved out here. I didn't know anybody. What I was doing when I moved out here, it was pretty funny. I put an ad in the New Yorker magazine, a little, like one of those little ads in the back of the magazine. It was before internet. Okay. No, none of that stuff. Yeah. I put a little ad in there and I did this thing I called gift wrap. And I wrote this rap song. And then I put the ad in the New Yorker, and people used to send me like pages of information about like someone's birthday or, and I'd write the lyrics and I'd make the tape and I'd send it to them. It was like a roast. It was like making fun of who they dated and where they came up from. But I had it was expensive. So I had some pretty famous people sending me pages of really personal information, which I don't think would happen today, but it was funny. But so I was doing that, trying to make money. And, I remember my sister asking me, well, how long are you going to do this for before you go back to engineering? And I'm like, and at first I was like, well, I'm going to give it a year. Right. And then in a year, it wasn't, not going to happen in a year. Then, 2 years and it's still not quite rocking. Then I'm saying, well, I'm going to give it 3 years. And then I was approaching 3 years and I realized, what, this is just what I have to do. I'm just going to keep doing this. And I think it's when you reach that point where, it's like when you set a timeline or have a way out, you ask yourself, well, how can I get out of this? What else could I do? But when you make the commitment, you're like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. Then you just ask yourself, how can I make this successful? Yeah. And it's the questions you ask yourself are so important. Like you got to ask yourself empowering questions and the right questions. And I think when you're like truly committed, and even quitting my job and moving out for a year to try it is not truly committed. That's trying it for a year. But when I was like, I'm just going to keep doing this because I wouldn't enjoy anything else. And it would be, for me personally, soul wrenching to go back to work for like a big company, unless it was music or something, unless it's my thing. So that's, I think when the turnaround where it was just like, you really start being creative and clever and thinking about how you can make it work.
That's awesome. I mean, you finished music school at 36 years old, but you have all this musical experience now, and now you have a degree serve you? Did it get you where you wanted? I mean, it gave you credibility, right?
Well, the engineering was great because I wasn't sure what I wanted. I didn't know myself well enough, but I think it's about solving problems. And what I found is, it's interesting. I know several entrepreneurs, and we know a few people, they have like plumbing businesses or motor boat business, but they're not plumbers or, sea enthusiasts. They have like these degrees in like economics or different things. So I think you learn a lot of skills in school. You learn how to finish things, how to come up against a lot of obstacles. And for me, solving problems and working through stuff. And at the time, there really wasn't TV, film, music school. There wasn't like orchestration for film school. Didn't exist. I mean, you could take, there were some music schools like where you could learn concert piano, but
Juilliard.
So I just learned it on my own. I just bought the equipment, read books where I could get them. And then after I moved out here, I didn't really quite have that skill set. So UCLA was offering classes, and they actually had teachers who did it for real. So that was amazing. But that was before they were just starting these programs up. But it's really about doing it yourself. I get a lot of kids will go to Berkeley or these film and TV programs, and they'll send me a tape like, hey, if you're looking, but they don't even have the equipment. Like some of these guys, it's like they take the class, they read the book, they might do a couple of assignments, and the stuff it's terrible, man. It's like they don't have the passion or the hours. It's like, and what I love about like in engineering, like you get your resume and your degree is important, but in music and creative, it doesn't, no one cares at all about where you went to school or what you did. They just want to hear that tape or see that video. It's like, is this stuff rocking or not? Is this great or not? So that's really what it comes down to, which I think is cool. It's about performance. It's like, if you're an athlete and you're great, no one cares where you went to,
Yeah, I think we see that. We see that now every Sunday, right? Like you come in the NFL and you got like, Troy State, and well, how come that guy, if he was so good, why didn't Alabama or Florida or Michigan sign that? Like, it doesn't matter where you came from. If you can play, you can play.
Yeah,
and they prove
the passion, because some people have the passion, and it's just like what they have to do, and they put the hours in. You got to put the hours in, man. So.
All right. So tell us a little bit about, did you have one of those most like impactful moments where you were like, man, I'm a kid, and, somewhere between like those years where you just knew like, hey, I am destined to be in the music industry. Like I am going to be LA. I'm going to do this and go plant my flag. And they're going to know Brad Chiet.
When I was a kid, basically, the career choices were engineer, lawyer, or doctor. I mean, that was ingrained in my head. So it took a while for me to really realize that music could even be a career. And like when I saw that magazine, it was really like, holy, like this can be a career. And then it was difficult thinking, is that possible? Can I really do that? Do I really want to do that? And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I had this huge epiphany on this trip I took to Chicago. And at the time I was engineering, but I was still working for this import-export company. I knew I wanted to work for myself and be an entrepreneur. I love old cars. I'm really into like muscle cars. And I wanted to get in, like work at a car designer was really part of the reason I went to engineering school. So I found that in Japan, they loved our old muscle cars. So I hooked up with this guy in Japan, and we were going to restore cars and send them over to Japan and do this whole business. So I go to Chicago to meet with this guy to see about buying some old cars. So I've never been to Chicago before. I'm from New York, so I know cities. I live in St. Louis, go to Chicago. I get there, I get in like 11 o'clock at night. I'm hungry. I figured, you know what? I'm just going to go down the street and grab something to eat. So I start walking down the street, and it's like deserted, man. It's like the Twilight Zone. It's like the apocalypse. And Chicago, especially then, was it was like a work town. So at 5 o'clock, everybody goes home. So it was dead, and it's cold, man. Like Chicago is the windy city. I'm not like, it's like windy, man. I'm like walking into the wind, trying not to fall over. It's like crazy. So everything's closed. I'm like walking around, and I finally see this one hotel with lights on, and it's this beautiful Art Deco building. So I figured I'll just go in there, warm up, ask somebody. So I go in this hotel, and the lights are on, and there's nobody there. It's like I haven't seen a person. I'm starting to freak out, and it has all this old Salvation Army furniture, and I'm like, what is this place, man? So I finally figure out. I'm walking around, I'm checking it out, and I realize that it used to be this beautiful hotel, but now it's an old age home. So it's converted. And I could just picture, like, during the day, all the old people, like, in their walkers and wheelchairs, waiting for someone to come visit, and no one ever comes. And, I'm just picturing this. And it's like late at night, it's like midnight now. And I'm just thinking, like, they're probably all up their rooms with their little IVs and, bedpans and, stuck watching Matlock. And, you always hear this vibe, like, oh, you can do what you want. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can always do your dream. But the fact is, there comes a point where you can't. It's like you lived your life, the game's over, you're up in one of those rooms, and you can't do it, man. So there is a time constraint when you can do things. And I pictured myself up in one of those rooms. And when I was walking around, I saw this, I was walking around the place, I saw this big box of records. So, I'm into music, like records, flipping through the records, and I see this one country artist that keeps coming up, and there's this, and I didn't really recognize the guy, but, there's one of him with the truck with the big hat, and there's one of him with his guitar and the two girls, and him with the dog, all these albums from like the 50s. And I'm thinking that, all these albums are here because this guy's in one of these rooms now. Like, this is his stuff, and this is him when he was younger. But now he's up in one of those rooms. So I just kind of put myself in that place. Like, if I was in one of those rooms and what it would be like, you're just like, you lived your life and it's done. And you just have your memories and what you did and your regrets. And I thought, if I was there right now in one of those rooms, and I could go back and be, young again and have a do-over, what would I do? And I figured, what, I got to at least try to do the music thing and my passion. Because the worst thing that could happen is you could get to the end of your life and be in that room and, like, have not even tried. Like, if you try and it doesn't work, you tried and, it didn't work. But if you don't even try, man, how can you live with that? It's over and I didn't even make the effort. I could not do. So I realized that, what, I got to just go for it, man. And that's when I went from, coming out to California and deciding to do that, and just deciding that I'm going to do what it takes to make it happen. Because, this is your one shot, and you can always go back to working for somebody or doing that. So you got to, for me at least, make that effort. And I'm not saying that's for everybody, because everybody, some people aren't entrepreneurs. Some people just want to work for a company and go home to their family. But for me, that was my journey and what I had to do.
Mm-hmm. That is so good. That's such a good story, right? And the foresight of a young man to kind of feel that, right? To be in that moment, like, that's impactful. I think a lot of people get into that situation at 75 and go, oh,
yeah, too late, man.
I wish I woulda, I coulda, I shoulda, and then we start running that broken record, right? And looping it back. Like, if this decision would have been different, and it's living, for me, it's living in regret. And
yeah, I can't. Yeah, that's to me, that is like the worst. And I heard an interesting study. I remember when I was in engineering and I was reading something, heard something, that most people spend more time planning a vacation than they do planning their life. Most people don't. They're just like, yeah, I need a job. Look in the paper. Okay, take that one. It's like they don't really plan their life. And I went to school in Florida. I got my first job in St. Louis. I was in St. Louis at my desk, 6:30. Every morning I had to be there at 6:30. I remember the first day I thought it was just for, like, to show up for the, orientation, but every morning I had to be in my tie at my desk. And I'm, like, not a morning person. That was tough. But I designed, now I'm in California. I live near the beach. I have a recording studio. I tell my kids this, that was by design. That didn't just happen. That was thought out, planned, premeditated. I thought of, how I wanted my life to go, and you can't plan everything, but you need a direction.
Yeah.
And you got to really think about what direction you want.
Love it. Okay. So let's pivot a little bit to, I love the quote, Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, 4 disciplines of execution. Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win. So let's talk about this time where you're down, where, maybe you're up against it. You're losing, like it's not going the way you want it to. But you found a way to come back and win. Like you're down, but not out. Talk to me about those moments of how you turn that around. What happened? Take us to the moment.
I think it's really about asking yourself the right questions, and that way you'll find solutions. It's like your brain's amazing. Whatever you ask it, you're going to get an answer for. So you have to be super careful what you ask it. Why does this suck? Why am I losing? Why am I not doing well? And I think that's part of when you make the commitment. And an example would be, I remember when I came out here, I was doing music, I was getting a few little jobs, but it was financially tough. I wasn't like, I was maybe paying rent, like barely rocking it. And then I read this thing and I had this idea for doing these commercials for car dealerships and trying to syndicate it. And this was in the 80s. This is before internet or any of that stuff. So it was a song that would work for Honda dealers. So I called, there was no way to get the information on all the Honda dealers. You could try to call information 411. So the local Honda National Association happens to be in Torrance. So I called him up and I said, hey man, I have this old Honda, which I don't. I have a Camaro, but I had like a 67 Camaro. But I said, and I'm driving cross country and I'm afraid it's going to break down. Could you give me the list of the dealerships? And they're like, oh, sure. So they sent me a book with every dealership in the country, phone number, address, like everything. I was like, wow, cool. So I sat there for a whole summer and I produced this jingle that was for Honda dealerships. I thought was really good. And I just called every one of them and I played it over the phone for them. I like plugged my cassette deck into the phone jack and played it for them. And it was really hard. It's like you're getting no, and they're not interested. And I'm like, I gotta play this thing. So I decided, how can I do this and make it fun? Because I'm not digging this and I'm not getting results. So this place had a broken hot tub. So I had the hot tub fixed and I made like a picture of like margarita and I'd sit in the hot tub with the phone and my list of Honda dealerships. And I'm like, started calling people like, hey man, how you doing? And now, I'm feeling good. I'm enjoying the process, starting to get some response, making some sales. They're turning me on to their ad agencies. And that turned into like a whole part of my career, working with these car dealerships and ad agencies and licensing songs. I mean, that's become a big part of what I do that helps me when the TV shows and things like that slow down. So I think it's just really asking empowering questions and being committed and trying to be clever. I always picture like the LA freeways just jammed with traffic and you don't want to be in that lane with everybody. You don't want to be a sheeple, So I always try to figure out what's the off ramp, what's the thing that everybody else is not doing that I could do differently. What's the pivot? How can I stand apart? So, I think those are things you have to ask yourself and work through.
Let's talk about this one. Like you got a very unique ability to take a different lens that other people don't take. Right. And maybe it's the creative, maybe it's, I don't know, but what do you think the superpower for you, for Brad, that separates you and catapults you to the 1%?
I think good at problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like you said, I really try to see the opportunity in everything. I mean, I've had some tough knocks like we all do, and things don't work out and last minute things cancel out. But to me, I always try to be like, okay, what's the opportunity? What else could we do? What makes this great? Where like even COVID to me was like a huge opportunity. I'm like, it was bad in a lot of ways, but there was some great opportunities. I think also a superpower is knowing your weaknesses and where to get help and working with other people. I think I don't try to solve everything. I think I'm good at finding the right people and then trusting them, and then trying to build a team of people I trust, finding good people. You want to work with good people. You don't want to waste your time with people. Like there's an expression, an amateur, an expert is expensive, but an amateur costs you a fortune.
Mm.
Which basically means like, you find the right people, they'll rock it. And even when I did the music, I didn't have all the musical skills, but I realized even a great composer hires an orchestra. He doesn't play every instrument. So I would get the best people. And I think that really helped me, which a lot of people don't. They try to do it too much themselves. And, asking the empowering questions that are going to empower you. I think a lot of people don't do that. And that's super important. And, also having a good perspective, like I was telling you the Chicago story, sometimes, I didn't really, like, some people have a great mentor. I wasn't fortunate like that, but I think a great person to ask advice to is yourself, but your older self, because they know you. Like if I asked you advice on something, that's your life and your color and your decisions. It might not work for me, but I could ask myself, like, well, if I was like in my 70s and I asked myself this question, or my 60s, and I was giving myself advice, what would I say? And being able to change that perspective, and stand outside yourself can really be empowering and helpful.
Mm. That's good. Yeah. I've never heard that before, by the way.
Really?
Someone asking my older self, right? Like, and it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. Like, hey, when I'm 70 years old, would I see that as a good idea?
Well, you got to put yourself in that position. Like, okay, I'm 70, I'm
No.
giving someone advice, and that person knows you better than anybody because he can give you real advice. Trent 70. I mean, it's not like, what would I say then? Like, you got to kind of put yourself there and like, what would I do? Okay, I'm 70 or I'm 80 or I'm in that hospital bed. I'm looking back on my life. If I was going to make that decision, what would I tell myself? And it can really give you permission and kind of get you out of the clutter of where you're at to think of it differently, to see the other angle of it.
When I think about you as that aerospace engineer and large corporate, right? That's not there's a great space for that. Large corporate's very specific. It's very they hire people for a specific skill set.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, listen, do this skill set again and again and again, right? It reminds me a little bit about Ford when we started to do the assembly line production. Well, just put this bolt in that tire. That's it. Well, what if I could, throw on the bumper?
Dude,
like, no,
idea.
just do the bolt on the tire, right? Like, no, I could do the bumper. And like, no, you can't touch the bumper. Like that would be you can't do it. And I'm like thinking, Brad, when I hear you speak, that would have killed you.
Dude, yeah, it was funny because if that engineering job at McDonnell Douglas wasn't so bad, it was so bad it wasn't hard to leave. Like if I had a better job, I probably would have stayed. But this was the job, dude. So they make airplanes, right, for the government, and the government wants to know how much the planes are going to cost. They need to estimate their cost, and sometimes it's on a plane that's never even been built yet. They want to know the cost. And if you look at a plane, you will notice it's all rivets. It's like all those little holes in the sheet metal. Basically, it's flying holes. Somebody has to drill every one of those little holes and put the rivet in. And that's the cost of the plane, is the man hours. So somebody figured, if we just count up all the holes, right, and maybe give them a little more time, if it's a big part or a little part, you can pretty much guess the cost of the plane. So my job was, this is during the recession, so they hired engineers to do this for some reason, was go down on the floor and count the holes in each part and come back and tell us how many. So my job was basically counting holes. And I was like dying, man. And that's why I used to sneak off to do music. And I used to sneak to other departments and like where they were solving problems and doing cool stuff. And my boss would be like, dude, man, you're always working on stuff, but nothing ever seems to get done, meaning the holes weren't being counted that he wanted. But I was like working in other departments. I was writing music. I was sneaking out for lunch and recording shit. I was like really busy, but I just couldn't count the holes, man. So, the upside of that is it was so bad that it was, it gave me the impetus to just, I got to get out of here and do something else. And when you're an engineer in these big companies, they used to have these metal desks, like you see, and they'd be like lined up, like just like a line of desks. And then facing that was another line of metal desks. So you're sitting there with a person to your right, a person to your left, a person in front of you, a person there. And you can see your whole life. Like there's the older guy in his 40s. There's the guy in his 80s, or I guess 60s, late 60s, getting his gold watch. It's like, it's done, man. Like there's the journey. It's like, I don't even have to live it. I get it, man. Okay, I'm good. So I just couldn't do it,
Yeah. Yeah, I live in Grand Rapids, right? Steelcase makes all those. This is metal desks, right?
Yeah, the Steelcase, yes.
Yeah. So
great desks, they last forever.
Yeah, they will, right? I've had to move
Generations of
those things
engineers
too, and those
use
things
those
suck. Heavier than snot.
Yeah.
Let me take you to a moment. A lot of people go, oh man, you followed your passion. It's all worked out great for you, Brad. Like, look what you did. You risked, right? You took a big risk. But let's dive into one of the big risks and potential stoppers that probably has changed your attitude, right? Your wife passes.
Yeah.
You have 3 kids. You're what age at this point?
So my wife passed about 8 years ago. So I was like in my late 40s, like 48. Okay. And she was 49. So she had cancer. So she was sick for a while. And the kids, when she passed, were 7, 11 and 12. So they were young. So it was tough because at that point, I started doing TV shows. I was like rocking it, man. Like every station you turn, it was like, oh, my show. Oh, me. I was like kicking it. So then, so it was really tough. And I learned a few things. One, I have this engineering, I'm very organized, industrial manufacturing. I could rock this out. And it was tough because I learned that, moms bring the love and the softness and the things that dad don't do. Most dads, can organize it, make the money, and, we can be the ball buster, but you also need the softness. And I remember my daughter used to bug me about, bringing her lunch to school. And I'm like, I set up the lunch program, you get whatever you want, it's all taken care of, do your thing. But I realized that what she really wanted was all the other moms would bring stuff to the girls, like little snacks or sandwiches. And she just wanted me to do that. She wanted someone to show her the love and bring her the snacks. So I had to learn that. And it really did pull me a lot out of the career. But, the irony of the whole thing is quitting the job. So many people were like, oh, that's such a big risk. And you're going to, this and that. So I quit the engineering job, and everybody in that department was trying to get out, but no one had the guts. And I used to just keep to myself and work. And then when I left, everybody was like, you can't do that. You can't just leave. I'm like, yeah, you actually can. So I left. They all stayed. And a year later, they all got laid off. So that was the first irony. And then they were like floundering. And when you're an entrepreneur, you always have work because you're always getting work. But, and then the second irony is that if I had stayed that path and I was married and my wife passed, I would be beholden to the company. I would be like out early in the morning and gone all day. And because I had my own company, my own career, I had a lot of flexibility. So during the day, if they needed something or something came up, I could be there. And I did, it did take my career back a lot, but, to me, everything's an opportunity. And it was an opportunity for me to really spend time with the kids. Because when she was around, honestly, she was with them more and I was mainly working, but it forced me to take that pause and to, be the mom too, and really, shape them and guide them, and then I did some work on the side. And, now that they're older, they're, 15, 20 and 21, now I'm, kind of pushing my career back and getting back to me and the things I want to do. But I really valued that time. Everything's a moment. Moments come and go. And if you don't take advantage of the moment, it's gone. So, like I said, one of my superpowers, just kind of, seeing the opportunity. It was an opportunity to be with them. And I really took that. And, it worked out great. And now I'm back to doing my thing.
It's good. If you knew somebody right now, somebody who's listening to the show, and you could speak to them on, hey man, I'm down. I'm beat up a little bit, man. COVID's hit my business. I'm bankrupt. I'm whatever. Is there a value, a belief, or an action that that you took or that you would recommend in their journey, like when things get hard, something they should just this is foundational. You have to start that turn here.
I think a lot of times we do know the things we need to do, and we need to figure out how to make it something we enjoy or fun, or asking the questions. I think it all comes down to trying to be clever and figure out what you can do. And it's tough because if you're, like life builds on itself, and, the decisions you make when you're younger do multiply, and you got to be willing to put in the time and the effort. A lot of people, they watch TV, they hang out, they don't put the work to better themselves, and your value is, and the amount of money you make is just an exchange for your value. The guy who makes $5 an hour gets $5 an hour because he brings $5 of value per hour. The guy who makes $50,000 an hour makes that because he's worth that. He brings $50,000 of value in an hour. So, I'm always trying to read and better myself and practice and make myself worth it. And you can't just wait for an opportunity to come by. You got to be ready for it. We always get opportunities, but you got to be prepared when the opportunity comes up. So, and I think people need to, it's like, and also it's a little bit about what, like, I was watching, you did the interview with Brad, and it was very interesting what he was saying about self-doubt and then circumstance.
Yeah.
I think, like
two kinds of doubt.
Yeah. It's like, sometimes you got to know when it's just you're doubting yourself, or when the circumstance is just unattainable, and you have to make a change, so, you got to think about if what you're doing, it's like, sometimes it's great to push, and you learn a lot. And entrepreneurs, we're like, we jump out of the plane and build a parachute on the way down. Mm-hmm. But, you want to know there's ground there too at some point. So, you got to be willing to be honest with yourself. And I've had times when I was, when I first started doing the music and things were slow, I went back to engineering for a while, but for a music company, and it was a cool job. And if that had been my first job, I probably would have stuck with it. But by then I was already, too far down the rabbit hole. But sometimes you got to, do other things, but hopefully you're doing things that are in line with where you're at. Like for me, my main passion and goal, and what I really want to do is write music for television shows. I've done like Deal or No Deal, Extreme Home Makeover, Super Nanny, and a bunch of more current stuff. But also I do like the commercials, like the licensing and these hit song automotive, because you want to have a B plan and something else going on too. So you got to be smart also. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. You mentioned Brant Pinvidic and his show with us. Brant's a good friend of ours. How did you meet Brant along the way? Were you like, did you meet him on Extreme Makeover? Like, no. I know he produced that, right?
No, I belong to this group called Metal, and it's a great, it's like a heartfelt entrepreneur group, which I think I share with you in LA. It's a great group, and it really helped me when my wife was really sick. And another advice I'd like to give if anybody's in that situation, and especially with kids and stuff, you still got to do things for yourself, because you have to have something to give. You can't just give. Too many people just give everywhere. And they, at this age, we have kids and stuff. At some point you have to fill to have something to give. And that's what the kids remember. They don't remember how many hours you put in. They remember the quality and your attitude, and you're successful and you're rocking it and you're doing what you love. That's the lessons they carry. So I did Metal every week, and I played in a big band and all these things, but they have different speakers come in. They have like amazing speakers come in, and Brant was one of the speakers, and he was talking about, his whole pitching your idea and being clear and concise, and this 3-minute rule and all this stuff. So I just went up and talked to him afterwards, like for like 30 seconds, gave him my card. And then like a couple of months later, I get an email from him, like asking me, like talking about, I think, what was he talking about? I don't know if it was the trip to Catalina, like some jet ski trip or something. And I'm like, like, did he like put the wrong email in? Like, I talked to the guy for like 30 seconds, man. And he was like, no, man, I remember you. I liked you. And we're doing this trip and I want you to go. And it's really funny because I think it was during COVID. And he's like, yeah, we're going to go jet skiing in Catalina. I'm like, well, that sounds safe. And, everybody's apart. It's jet skiing. We're not near each other. So I'm looking up the ship from like Long Beach to Catalina. It's like a 2-hour boat, and you go there and they have jet skis and scuba and all this great stuff. So I'm looking and there's no boats. And I'm like, I'm calling. It's like, because of COVID, they closed everything down. So I'm like, so I called Brad. I'm like, dude, like, I'm sorry. How are you getting to Catalina? He's like, oh no, we're jet skiing to Catalina. And I'm like, what? It's like, you're jet skiing across the ocean to Catalina? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, okay, hold on. Let me see if I can make that. I'm like, and I decided to do it. And he just does everything extreme. And he's a brilliant guy. He's a very smart guy.
Yeah, very smart guy.
And very funny and charismatic.
Yes.
And it was a great interview you did with him too, because it wasn't another interview about him talking about his book. It was him talking about like everything else that he usually doesn't always talk about. So you had some great questions.
Thank you. There's so much for him to give, right? Like he fills the tank and he gives a lot. And I think that description of what you said is great because everyone goes, hey, just give us the 3-minute rule tank. Like, I'm like, oh, no. You want to talk to him about this other stuff because that dude's like smart, like wicked smart.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And you don't want to get into that. Like you got to talk to him about his life, man, because some things have come along. And I think that's what one of the challenges of our show brings out in most people, right? Which is I talk to these super successful people like yourself. And they think like, oh man, it's all been rainbows and unicorns. They just, always knew music and everyone just lifted him up. And, he was probably a member of KISS and now he's got this. I'm like, no, that's not how it works, man. Like they have to go through trials. They have to go through challenges and they got to overcome it, around it, through it, under it. Like they got to go through things to appreciate what they have and find their authentic self in all this and where they land.
Yeah. And how usually the people, I've looked at a lot of successful people and I studied them and I've read them. And, even the guys in the rock band, you think, oh, rock band. A lot of those guys are super smart. Like you're talking about Boston, he has a degree in engineering. I mean, it seems like no matter what they're doing, even if it's something that doesn't seem like it, they probably are very well read and very smart. Even comedians. There was like a master class with, I can't remember his name right now. Wild and crazy guy.
Steve Martin.
Yeah, Steve Martin. And he seems like he does a stupid thing, but if you check out that class, the guy's brilliant. And the things he was doing at the time, very well read, very smart. So a lot of these people are very smart, or they have like a real talent. They just have a real natural ability at something. So I think too many people, especially today with the YouTube, like I want to be famous and I'll just do something silly and be famous. I mean, it's a lot of work, man, and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of putting stuff off. And when I was an engineer, I had a friend of mine, and what we did was we both made a pact and we got rid of our TVs. We like sold our TVs. We're like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to do the work. That doesn't mean coming home at night and watching TV. So we got rid of our TVs. And, I don't really even watch TV. And I think there's a Zig Ziglar quote, like, the people with, poor people are the ones with few books, but big TVs, and the successful people are the one with a lot of books and small TVs.
Yeah. I like that in the Ben Carson movie, right? Like Gifted Hands, and his mother, right, who can't read, walks in and she's cleaning for the very wealthy, professor, right? Yeah. And she's looking at this gorgeous, mahogany library that's got books to the ceiling, right? He's got like the ladder, like the library, right? Yeah. And she's like, did you read all these books? And he's like, yeah, I've read all of them. And she's like, and she walks home and she's like, boom, TV gone. You're doing a book report. Perfect library for you, Ben, and your brother too. And it's like, like they just shut it off. Yeah. And, now talk about tough. Now, man, it was tough when you and I were kids, right? TV was big. It was important. There was lots of programming. It was coming on for sure. And HBO and Cinemax had started, we're about close to the same age. And, but now, man, I mean, phones, the entertainment is just everywhere in your face, all the time. And kids got to walk away. You want to be something, you got to go do something.
Yeah. And it's tough because it's like when Mozart just had the piano and that's all he had, that's where he spent the hours. And it's so easy to do something and be distracted and not put in the hours. But I have my one son, my middle son, he's a programmer and he does VR games and all these things. And he's like, he's a bit of an influencer. His last game, I think, had 6 or 7 million downloads, an app he did. But
wow.
But when he was younger, he used to read like crazy. So it's not like he just makes up a game like kids do. He knows that it needs a story and it needs a follow through and a lead in. I mean, he's put in the hours reading and learning and has something to say and something to talk about and knows how to put a story together, and that's why he's successful. He knows how to make it engaging, which a lot of kids don't learn because they don't put the hours in reading and learning and thousands of hours just programming and doing his thing and, never watching TV, Yeah.
And I hope, what I concern is I don't want kids ever to lose that passion for learning. Right. And as our company works with so many, just absolutely, top shelf executives, it's lifelong learners all over, right? Like they are constantly consuming. And, we talk about that, the CEO who reads 50 books a year and you're like, wait a minute, don't you run like 2 companies worth $1 billion? And like, yeah, but I got to keep up, right? I gotta keep educating myself. It doesn't stop.
Yeah. You're always learning and growing, but that's where the passion comes in. It's like, and that's why I think, and another reason I switched, which I'm just remembering now, from engineering to music was I knew I was okay at engineering, but I would never be great at it because I didn't have the passion for it. And everything you do is so competitive. Your field is competitive. My field's competitive. Every field these days is so competitive. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to put in the extra time and effort and energy and work through all the crap that comes down with it and all the setbacks to be successful at it. So for me, I think that's important. It's the same as in a relationship. When you're in a relationship with someone, like your wife, your girlfriend, there's a lot of tough things that happen. Life is tough. You get pissed at each other, you get bored. But I think that passion is super important and sometimes underrated, and that intimacy and stuff, because you need that. That's the glue and the silliness and the fun that keeps you through the hard times.
Yes.
And it's the same with work. You need that fun and playful and silliness. And that's why asking the questions, how can I make this fun? I was doing this theme show. I had an opportunity to do a demo for a theme for a TV show. And it was like, they already had someone, they already liked it, but I got it in. So I figured I'm going to do this. And I'm like sitting in my studio, like I could just sit here and try to bang something out. But I decided, you know what? Nah, man, that's not going to be fun. I didn't quit my engineering job to come out here, again, perspective, to just sit here by myself in my studio. So I got some great players, like, one guy played with Bon Jovi and one guy played with Alanis Morissette. I got these great musicians. And I said, look, I'm going to rent a studio. We're all going to hang out for the afternoon. We're all going to bring ideas and we'll just split. Whoever gets it, we'll just split it and share it. And I'll just pay for everything and I'll pay for lunch. And it was a fun day, and it was awesome. And I think, you got to ask yourself that, like, it's like Brant was saying about what's the joy in it? Where's the value in that? And, fortunately I find that in my work, and I make sure I don't lose that passion, and you have to protect that. And I see too many entrepreneurs and artists, they work so hard, they lose that spark they had when they were young, and you got to protect that, because people will just like ask from you and take from you, and you get pushed into doing things you're not really into and lose your course. You got to protect that, like that spark, like a diamond, and keep it going. So I think that's hugely important.
Huge.
Yeah. And that's why at the end of the show, I was playing the thing on the go. It's like, that was silly, but it was fun. And it was the passion,
Yeah. And it's so cool that, when you think like, it's very different from my mind work, but when I'm talking about people, I'm always calculating like, hey, how can I help them? who do they need to meet? Man, listening to their issues or their challenges, what could help them resolve that? And it's my mind naturally turns to this. And I was impressed because we start talking about doing the show together and stuff like that. And you're 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 like generating music, right? Around like, hey, like here's a cool lead in that would give some energy. Like, and I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. Like, and I would never think that. And it's just like you just trigger that. And man, it's so cool. It's
Yeah.
just so cool. So is there a go-to? Is there a go-to like quote for you, a verse that you find value in and that just has served you?
Um, I don't know. I mean, it always changes and stuff. I have a whole document of quotes I'm just kind of looking at because I was thinking about that. I think the one I was talking about where like some people make $5 an hour because they bring $5 of value, and some people bring
Yes.
It's like really adding value to what you do. And what's another great one? I'm trying to look here. I guess, the one thing, like rich people have small TVs and big libraries, and poor people have small libraries and big TVs.
Yeah.
That's another good one. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Some people they just have some friends and they're always like taking classes and learning and trying to figure it out. And, the opportunities just pass them by. And I had this friend, Sam, who's a producer, and he said something that really resonated with me. And I was asking him, how do you become successful? What'd you do? And life has these moments. You get like a moment, like someone will ask you something, or maybe you'll meet somebody, and the moment passes. So if you don't take advantage of that moment, you go, like when Brant called and asked me to go jet skiing to Catalina. I mean, like that didn't sound like a great idea. It sounded kind of a little scary, but it was a moment, and if I said no, then that moment would have passed and it wouldn't have turned into the other things. And then, even meeting you. So I think I look at everything in life as a moment, and that's an opportunity that you can either take or it passes you. And you don't have to take every moment, but you got to appreciate that. Hey, this is a moment, like, hello, are you going to go with it, or are you going to just like let it pass? And so many people are lazy. And that motivates me. Like at night, sometimes I'm tired and a friend will call. I just met a friend for dinner the other night, and it was like, I'd really rather just go to sleep, man. I'm kind of tired. Or my son will be like, hey, Dad, let's take a walk. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I've been working out all day. So I think, it's a moment to be with him. So I look at everything as a moment, and try to appreciate the value in it.
Yeah, I've learned so much today, man. Like, when you talk about the value of upskilling and learning and putting the time in, taking the TV out and actually doing the work. I mean, I think you took a big risk, right? And maybe other people don't see that as a big risk. I mean, I don't even know if you see it as a big risk because
I saw it as the worst thing that could happen is I end up back to a job I didn't really like. So a lot of people saw it as a huge, like you're quitting your job and your 401k and you're this and you're that, and you're going to be like music in California. But like I had to try. And the worst case scenario is I end up back in a place I don't like. So I did really weigh out the risk. I didn't just like, dude, music. I mean, I thought about it and I planned it and I looked at it and I looked at what the risk and the reward was. And I even talked to my boss in engineering. I said, what would you do? If I quit, can I come back? It's like, well, if you quit, I probably won't have a job for you, but you know what? I would do it if I were you. I mean, you got to go for it, man.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So do you just still talk to that boss? Like you remember him? Like, do you think he would remember you?
I don't know. It was like 30 years ago.
I know.
But,
right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
a couple other good things, like look for the opportunity. I think when things are down, we see all the negative, right? We get anxiety about all the fears of what may happen and all those things. But you've got an absolutely uncanny ability to flip the lens, Brad, and I love it. Right, like to say, hey, look for the opportunity. There's opportunity in this, right? Like COVID. Hey, it's a pandemic. I'm looking for opportunity. I'm going to be in my home studio. I don't have to leave because I got nowhere to go. Like nothing's open. So like I can be pumping out great content and be with my kids. And
yeah, well, I got to, I mean, you know, a lot of people had a really tough time. I was very fortunate. I didn't have like a toddler. I wasn't in a bad relationship. You know, I had my health. Some people had it very tough. So I was super fortunate. But, you know, I took it as like the big pause, you know, and my 15-year-old really got shortchanged with his mom. And I was so busy with work and the two older ones. This is like a great opportunity for me to do stuff with him and connect with him while it was just me and him. So we did a lot of cool stuff together. And I did things to the house and the studio. I started got back really into reading, got, you know, a lot of other finances and things in order that I've been putting off when you're too busy with life. You know, you just you're working for yourself. Projects are coming up. So I really tried to take advantage of the situation. And even when I'm, you know, supposed to meet someone somewhere and then they cancel, I'm like, all right, that sucks. But you know what? Now I have time to do this, you know? So, you know, I always do. And sometimes that's not good because you can be in like a bad relationship, but you keep seeing the positive in it, you know? So, you know, I have this expression, our best traits are also our worst traits. So you got to be careful because, you know, the thing that makes you awesome is probably also the thing that annoys people that can set you back. So you have to, you know that. But, you know, I think that's really kept me always moving forward, is trying to find out, okay, that didn't work. What can I do? You know, I'm stuck here for an hour. How can I make the best use of that time? You know, where can I really make things happen?
Yeah, I think the other one that really got me was, you know, just value adding, like do the work, like be an adder. How do you go in and provide contribution and things like that in the space? I thought that was so important. And I like the quote, you know, you have to be great to start, but you know, you got to start. You don't have to be great to start, but you got to start to be great. I love that quote. You know, when I thought about our time, Brad, I really thought about the power of you know, the critic, right? Teddy Roosevelt's famous his famous you know, speech was, you know, it's not the critic who counts, right? As he talks about the man in the arena, I think is what they call the speech, right? The man in the arena, and who's to be admired because they're out doing it. They're not talking about it. They're not hoping. Hope's not a strategy. You know, it's actually in the mix all the way. And, you know, Brad, when you talk about all the pivots you've made and going in it, man, I just admire that about you. You're also willing to lean into an area that other people don't even see the value. I mean, I'd love to see, you know, real quick before we go, I want to know, like, the Wiggles. These guys have made, you know, they're guys making money selling to kids shows, right? Like this kid album. They got the music, and like maybe they all wanted to be Bon Jovi one day. I don't know, but they found a way to make a ton of money in a business by developing a jingles, like, and they're jingle guys, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do we have any respect for the Wiggles?
No, I mean, I think it's great when you can make a living doing what you like. And, you know, they probably just knew it was something to be creative. I mean, you never know exactly where your path's going to go, but I think it's interesting that if you're true to yourself, and I think a lot of it is being true to yourself, and you do the things you like to do, there's some career that marries those weird things. You know, I have like the engineering degree and problem solving. I like music. I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, they seem disjointed, but then for doing music for TV shows or commercials, you know, you got to be good at problem solving. You got to do music. You want to be an entrepreneur. You know, I mean, I'm not the rock star type, but, you know, because I wanted to make a living and I wasn't, you know, willing to live in a van for 5 years touring. But whatever you do, and I do some stuff for this organization called Leap, and they have kids from all over the world. Like once a year, they have you know, high school kids come in and they try to teach them like these skills you don't learn in school. They have all these amazing entrepreneurs come in and talk to them and stuff. And a lot of them will come up to me and ask me about, you know, getting in music. And I kind of talk to them and try to figure out, well, what are you interested in? What are the other things you like? You know, do all those things you like. You might like, you know, acting and music and medicine, and then maybe you'll end up in some weird career as like people who have cancer and doing like acting in the hospital and as a supporter in old age home, just like whatever your interests are, there's some job that incorporates that you can do that no one else does. And the weirder your interests are, it's okay. You don't need to work at a big corporation where most people go. You might find something but there's only one of you anyway. So you just need to find that one place where you fit. And if you have the passion and it's your interest, you'll probably be very successful. And I think that's hugely key.
Yeah. That is great. So for everybody, please follow the show on YouTube Live. Many more videos on Leadershipity channel. We are on Leadershipity, Instagram, Twitter. Trent M. Clark, of course, are my handles. You can find us at www.leadershipity.com. And look forward to every Friday on our show, Winners Find a Way, at 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Be sure to look for our upcoming ebook on the pyramid of Leadershipity. Super excited about that rolling out. And as you know, and hopefully you've enjoyed today's episode, continue to listen, rate us 5 stars. We work hard to find value delivering stories like from the 1% leaders like Brad Chiet, which has just been awesome, Brad. I am so thankful for the time today, man. This has been fabulous.
Yeah, right on, man. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Tell them where they can find you one more time.
Just type in Brad Chiet and I will show up. LinkedIn, and I think on there's fuelmusic.com, FUELMUSIC.com. Cool.
For everyone else, thank you for joining Winners Find a Way. We'll see you next time.
Take care.